business owner? Entrepreneur? Want to learn how online marketing can improve your business?
Your questions.
Our advice.
This is Not a Real Job.
Hello, and welcome to episode 93 of Not a Real Job, the comedy podcast about side projects, creativity on the internet, marketing, and all things adjacent to that. I am Chris Van Patten, and I make websites and apps in New York.
And I am Joel Kelly, and I do marketing for the travel and tourism industry up in Nova Scotia, Canada.
There you go. How's it going? It's been a while.
It's been, I would say, if I had to say, Chris, I'd say too long.
Yes, indeed. And it you do have to say, so I'm glad you said it.
Mm-hmm. One of us had to say it, and it makes sense that it was me because I'm the one that's really dedicated to our relationship.
It's true. I just sort of go with the whims of my heart.
So now you've been
Everywhere.
You've been everywhere. How many countries have you been to in the last few months?
I've been to 7 countries since the start of the year.
Too many. And in how many of those countries can you, is it safe, I guess?
All of them.
But
all of the countries.
Even outside of America.
I have.
Yeah.
I know, hard to believe,
Mm-hmm.
but I think America's leadership has really done a great thing for the world.
Now, do you consider yourself a bit of an ambassador?
We all do.
Right.
I think we're all bringing our culture and our unique, our willpower,
Mm-hmm.
and we're sharing that with the world.
Manifest destiny.
Indeed.
Mm-hmm.
Indeed. And particular manifest destiny. There's no woman in manifest destiny.
Manifest destiny?
Yeah, gross.
Which part is gross? Women or the joke you made?
The joke that I made.
Okay. Just to clarify.
Yeah. No, definitely. I am the gross one.
Speaking of women, I thought we should make this entire episode really just about our perspective on the other half of the human species.
Which is really, I think, what the people have been asking for. I mean, everyone, I don't
Clamoring
know about you,
for.
but walking down the street, people stop me. People stop me all the time.
Say, what do you think?
They want autographs. They want my knowledge. They want me to give a bit of myself to them. But they stop me all the time and they say, Chris, we need more men talking about.
Oh, I thought you were just going to stop at Chris. We need more men.
Well, I mean that's sort of an undercurrent. That's a
we're in danger of being outnumbered.
It's true. It's true. I mean, it's very close. I think it's 51-49 right now, which
I don't like those odds.
No, it's not good. It's not ideal. So we got to get to work there.
I feel like our systematic oppression hasn't been aggressive enough.
I would say it has not been. I don't think aggressiveness is the issue.
No.
I think the problem is that we need to be better about suppressing and negging, really. The dangerous forces of femininity. I can't even say it.
Well, don't even say it. I don't want to hear it.
True. Fair.
So this is our podcast.
No,
this is our guilt cast.
We're 100% kidding.
We feel bad about being who we are.
Yeah.
As
in all aspects
and everyone
of life.
else should.
I mean, in relation to feminism, whiteness, just humanity, just general our existence. I mean, we've got a lot of guilt between the two of us.
It's hard being privileged.
Yeah.
We make it work.
But we have been talking about this a little bit. I know you and I had a brief conversation via iMessage about another recent podcast who sort of has grappled a bit with the issues of finding a female audience and that kind of thing. I don't know. Do we feel comfortable naming names, linking links?
Yeah, I mean that's the question. Do we deal with the elephant in the room, or do we not? And I think yes. I think we should.
I'm going to let you lead the charge.
Right.
The elephant charge.
I talk a lot about this podcast called ATP, or Accidental Tech Podcast. I'm a big fan of the show, but I think they have had the last not the last 2 episodes. They've had a couple episodes I think recently, but they did 2 episodes in a row where they were talking about the feedback they received in response to a question that John Syracuse, one of the 3 straight white male hosts on the show, had posted on Twitter with women and girls who listen to our show. What can we do to get more women and girls to listen to the show? which on its face can very easily seem like a normal, even noble, even positive thing to ask. And so they had 2 episodes of the show about this question and the feedback they received. And I just think it was particularly enlightening because this is the identical thing that Chris and I have talked about. You know, we would love to think that our show doesn't just appeal to straight white men like us. Because, I mean, not just because we're the single worst force for what's bad in the world, but also, you know, you want to believe that we can have a more diverse audience, or that our interests aren't as singular and aren't as solipsistic.
But also, I think
as they might feel.
To take that even further,
Mm-hmm.
but also I think both of us want to, I guess, not even just like the passive idea of having female listeners, but also like I think we want to be have some kind of active role in spreading, I guess, these ideas, but also like I think we want to play, or certainly I do. I want to play more of an active role,
right? To the extent that we're capable, and I would even say allowed.
Yes,
we would like to consider ourselves feminists at the very least.
Yes.
You know, but if we have a show where, you know, through its either unconscious bias, through, you know, the microaggressions that people like us make all the time, if there are things that we're doing that is suggesting we're not feminists, or that we're not doing what we can, then we would like to address those things. And ATP was attempting to do the same thing. I think where they really, really dug themselves a hole was most of their feedback that they got was, okay, have a woman on the show. Which, like, the you would think the easiest thing for them to address. And the biggest thing that they could do was also the one that they refused to do. And I think that's what makes it especially, I'm going to say especially tough for them, understanding that they deserve no sympathy, but tough for them because they have a show that is 3 hosts. They started a car show that devolved into a tech show. That's why it's called Accidental Tech Podcast, because there are 3 guys who like to talk about cars, and happens that it's 3 guys who are programmers who like to talk about computers and programming. They don't have guests on their show. All 3 of them are straight white men. So the request that they got, and the biggest request they got, was, okay, just have a woman on the show, and that will not just prove that you're serious, but also it will make it more inviting and more welcoming. And that's precisely what they said they can't do, because that would change the show. And interestingly enough, they got supposedly a significant amount of feedback from women saying, no, don't do that. I listened to the show because it's you 3 guys. But I found that especially interesting and enlightening for us, because we don't have that problem necessarily. We are 2 straight white guys, but we're more than happy to have guests. I would say we're more than happy to, if it ever got to it, have a permanent co-host.
Yeah, I would absolutely. I think, I really think, like, I mean, I enjoy bantering with you, and I think that can continue to be a big part of the show. But I mean, I would love to have weekly guests. And I think part of that for me is that, and I don't think you feel quite the same way, but I feel like for a long stretch there, and partly this was due to the fact that there was so much travel happening. We've both been so busy, but I feel like the show has sort of lost a bit of direction.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like we were moving in a very specific direction for a while late last year, but then both of us I was sick for a while, the butt disease, of course.
Mm-hmm.
We both became very busy. I went off to Spain. We had so much trouble recording that I think for really the first half of this year, which, crazy enough, we're just about to finish up, I feel like we lost a little bit of direction. Yeah. And so to me, not only is this a great opportunity to bring awesome women onto the show as guests, but also I sort of see it as a good way for us to also kind of visit what the thesis of the show is, and revisit a little bit what we're interested in talking about, and acquire again some sense of direction and purpose in the show.
Yeah, and I yeah, you're right. I think I have provided some resistance to that, or to direction. I think most of that comes from exhaustion, more than an actual concerted, belief.
But also, I mean, I think you have the valid point that you were very interested in sort of the banter aspect of the show. and certainly like you very much like the Accidental Tech
Hello.
podcast. I will readily admit, like I listened to those episodes after you recommended them, but that's not a show I'm going to listen to again. It felt like a lot of rambling, a sort of a lack of purpose, which I guess if that's what you're after, great. Like I get that this is a thing. Like talk radio obviously exists. Like these are things that some people want. But to me, I think with the shortness of our show being sort of a 20, 30-minute show every week, I don't know that it accomplishes the same thing. Or certainly I don't think it does it as well as they can do it when you're devoting 2.5 hours to that topic. You can get in a lot deeper than we're able to. And you know, I guess with that awareness of that, I think our show is not really conducive to that type of rambling. Not that we shouldn't banter, and I think that's what gives the show its character. But I think it would be really great to have either, you know, regular guests or certainly more regular than we've been doing that. I think that would give us a direction and a focus to pursue. And that doesn't mean that we're going to bring women and talk about feminism all the time. I mean, certainly that can come up and that can be the topic. I actually have a note here in the doc. I don't know if you saw this side project podcast, because I feel like that's kind of what we've sort of been thinking about all along. And certainly later last year when we were kind of looking at this, you know, turn your hobbies into jobbies kind of thing. But I think it's less about making careers. And I think it's more about like, how do you juggle the side projects, right? Like, how do you figure out what to focus on? How do you use that precious extra time that you have wisely? And I think there are a lot of cool people out there and a lot of cool women, especially like who are doing that kind of thing. And I've been sort of mentally formulating a list in my head of like really cool people, really cool women I know who are doing really interesting side projects, pursuing their art, pursuing, their passion, starting a business or whatever. And I think it would be really beneficial to the show and give us another sense of direction to consider doing that, or at least trying it out. Seeing
obviously I'm 100% behind that. And I think, you know, it's funny, maybe the side project podcast and juggling all that stuff is where we should go in a more directed feel. It reminded me of, have you watched It's Such a Beautiful Day, the Don Hertzfeldt animated movie? It's on Netflix.
Take it, it's not related to It's a Wonderful Life. Okay.
Correct. It couldn't be more different. Well, I mean, I'd say it's related.
Then no,
yeah,
we're all related in the great spirit of Gaia.
So anyway, it's an incredibly depressing and incredibly funny movie about a stick figure named Bill. And as Wikipedia says, who struggles with his failing memory and absurdist visions, ultimately coming to terms with his own demise. But anyway, there's a moment in the movie, and it's one of my favorite parts, where he's like, Bill started to think about how much time he'd wasted, you know, going to work, coming home, going to the grocery store, waiting in line, you know, worrying, you know, he'd all, you know, thinking about all the, you know, how much of his life he'd wasted doing all these mundane things. And then Bill realized this was his life. And it hits you in a really existentialist, dramatic thing. But I think, you know, the good that our show produce, the good that we could actually bring into the world, is it about trying to help people who are busy, who have lives, who have families, who have jobs, extract more life, more productivity, more fulfillment from whatever side projects or hobbies or, you know, things like that they're able to carve out of, you know, what for most people is an extremely busy, extremely exhausting day. And, you know, and I think that ties into things like diversity and feminism, because of course, you know, minorities, women are not a minority. I know it needs to be said, but they're often treated as one. People who have harder lives than us, can we use, our privilege, our perspective, our insight into a little bit more about how this system works to help people, to give people a boost up. You know, we've been boosted up on the winds of privilege. Is this show, at times at least, can it be a way for us to give people a boost? We know a lot about how this system works because we've been, cooperating and complicit in it, and maybe we can help people with their hobbies. Maybe we can help people with their side projects because we have a little bit of insight into that, because the system has been architected around us and people like us. I don't know. And that of course is so self-congratulatory. It's so, look, we're not bad people, which I totally understand. And if you are a woman or minority or someone who is not precisely like us going, oh my God, this guy's trying to excuse his own privilege and behavior, you're 100% right. So I just want to head that off. Like, yeah, absolutely. This is an attempt at mitigating guilt. But I think, just because that's a personal motivation doesn't mean that someone else could stand to gain from it.
Yeah. And I would add to that, like, I don't want this to become a feminist podcast in the sense that, like, I want us to promote those values, but I don't want it to be a podcast about feminism because I don't feel qualified.
Oh, of course.
To talk
yeah.
about
we
that.
would rightly be.
I don't feel it would be appropriate for me to talk about that. So I think not that it should be a secondary goal, but I don't want to make the content necessarily about that insofar as, like, that's the main focus of the podcast, because I wouldn't feel comfortable preaching every week, even, for 20 minutes from, I think we're both well-meaning. Like, it doesn't sit right with me. I'm happy to talk about it, but I don't want it to be like the point. And I think the idea of, like, we've really been doing it. I mean, the discussion about your book, which we'll address in a moment, that's a side project. The app that we're working on, that's a side project. I mean, goodness knows both of us have dozens of side projects happening at any given time. And I think if we can show people sort of how to do that, how to make that time in your life and make sure that it's productive and that it actually fulfills you, but also, like, addressing this issue of diversity as well, like, at the same time, like, I think that to me is the ultimate scenario.
Yeah, I agree. And I fear going too much further into this, and embarrassing myself anymore.
So let's cut it off here. Let's if you've got feedback, if you've got ideas, thoughts, we want to hear those. Of course, always, anytime. Please talk to us. It makes us feel like we're not just talking at each other. But let's jump to a different tack. What are you drinking?
I just finished my drink, but it was a vodka soda with some lime juice. What are you drinking?
I am drinking a brewery Ommegang from Cooperstown, New York.
Nice.
Fleur de Au Blanc, which is a summer ale.
What's it like being back in New York? Are you happy about it?
I am. It was obviously a little mixed to leave Barcelona. And then Mexico, of course, was great. But there's an energy that New York has, which I'm sure I'm going to tire of very quickly. But there is kind of this drive and this just constant hum of activity in New York that I really love. And it is kind of nice to be back in my own bed with my own blankets and pillows and my own desk and all that. It's nice to be back somewhere that feels like home.
Yeah.
I guess. As Lane
no. I do think New York is. Now, I haven't traveled, extensively to your major urban centers in the States, but I mean, like, I've been to, like, Miami, Orlando, briefly, like Boston. Haven't been to California yet, but I was just in Washington, D.C. Then I've been to other large cities like London, Toronto, Vancouver, Montreal. There is an energy, and there's an energy and there's an optimism of New York that is special. And I think,
but also I think what's interesting about New York is that you have this constant push to do better and this constant optimism in that sense. But we're all also assholes and cynics. And that to me is kind of like the perfect combination, because I can be my grumpy old self. I'm like a 75-year-old grumpy old man, while having sort of the drive and the push to do more and to work harder and do better. Which, of course, as longtime listeners know, that usually ends up landing me in a state of burnout. But it is nice to be back.
No, but again, it's kind of, part of it is sort of adorable that you think New York is cynical. Like, come to small town Canada, spend some more time. Like, New York is the most hopeful least cynical and one of the most friendly places that I visit often. I think there's something about that giant melting pot. There's something about having to live in close confines with other people that requires one to, in a stable society, to be a little less cynical, to be a little more hopeful. Like everyone in New York, to get by, has to hope that the person next to them isn't the worst. Otherwise your society couldn't run. You come to, where I live, where there's not a lot of us and we're fairly spread out, you can go a long time without interacting with another human being. And in that intervening period, you can think a lot about how shitty that other person will be, when I run into them. So I think there's something special about New York or other dense cities that have a stable society. Again, stability is relative, but like we had, how many restaurants was it? It was like some number. I need to figure out the number. We had several restaurants in my city that were fined for not serving Black people. Like that's, you want cynicism, you want depressing, come to a small town. So I'm excited that you're excited for a little bit, at least, about New York, because as an outsider, as someone who only gets to visit, I think the objective outside opinion is valuable in that there is something special happening there. It's got its downsides. It's got its dark sides like anything else. But, coming from a small town and going to a big city can do wonders for one's hope and optimism. So keep it up.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'll be traveling more, which I think offsetting sort of the intensity of New York will be good. I'll actually be in Canada 2 weeks from this recording. I'm going to be speaking at a conference in Hamilton, Ontario. So yeah, I think sort of balancing the intensity and then the hopefulness of New York with a little bit of, something a little bit different. I think that's going to be a recurring theme in life here. But anyway, that's enough about me. Let's briefly look at the book.
The book is out.
The book is out.
What do we do? What do we do with that?
So longtime listeners of the show know that Joel's been working on this novella for a little while, Scolding the Winds, and it's finally it's out as of last week. And I read it on the plane home from Mexico, devoured it very quickly, and it's phenomenal. There's not a spare word. It's captivating. It's gripping. You can read it in one setting because it's relatively short. I think my iBooks put it around 75 pages, which are like iPhone size pages. But yeah, it's out. It's $4.99. Is that correct?
$4.99. It's out. Yeah. I consider it's a novella, so I consider it's about a third of a short novel. Ideally, were this to go well, it will be the first third of a novel. But yeah, no, I'm so happy to hear that, Chris. It's definitely it's a minimalist style. I try to accomplish a lot in spare words. That's absolutely something. I mean, that much of that comes from, my day job as a marketer. So much of that is about attempting to communicate as much as possible in a short space without losing nuance or meaning. So it is definitely an exercise in an attempt to do that sort of thing. But yeah, I'm really excited about it. I mean, it's not selling super well yet, but got a bunch of press releases out there. I'm running some ads. So, here's hoping. I'm not getting too worried about that now. It launched on a holiday in Canada, which probably did me no favors. But yeah, I'm extremely happy. It's an incredibly personal story in that while the experiences of the main character are not mirrors of mine by any stretch, there are definitely similarities and things I've drawn from. But their experiences, much of them are experiences that real people have had, either that I know or know of.
And I would say this book also, it sort of, it reflects, or maybe not reflects, but it continues with a lot of the ideas that you put in No Greater Love Than This. It's not a literal, it's not a continuation. It's not a sequel or a prequel or anything like that. I don't even know if you consider them as part of the same verse, the same universe, but they're definitely There are a lot of themes in your writing that seem to have carried over into this. So it's kind of interesting to see them expanded on. Whereas the last one was really a short story. This one, it's kind of interesting to see you with a little more space.
And No Greater Love Than This was explicitly autobiographical. It was narrative nonfiction. So the themes certainly carry over. But what I was trying to do, I mean, what do I have expertise in? You know, what story can I tell that might be unique to me in my experience? And when it, you know, the three things are, you know, family, religion, loss, and advertising. And that's what this book is. I mean, it deals with the dark side of religion. Not to suggest that all religions have this dark side. Not necessarily to suggest that. Let me correct myself. But it's certainly a dark side that some religions can have, and how that affects a person. I mean, we go through much of our lives, you know, thinking that there's not a lot of harm in bad beliefs, or that family or love can extinguish that harm. And what I'm really trying to do with this story is give an example of, you know, how devastating belief can be, not just to an individual, but to a family, and you know, the byproduct of that. And of course, the fact that the main character works in advertising is not just because that's easy because I work in advertising, but there's a not so subtle connection between the selling of ideas, between a corrupt society. So what I attempt to do I'm not sure to what degree of success, is to really show that love, loss, religion, and advertising are all exist on potentially a spectrum. And I know I'm kind of getting ahead of myself and rambling a bit, but yeah, I think the themes and the emotion that I'm trying to get are not super subtle, and hopefully they come across. And that's why the language is as spare as it is, because I'm not really trying to be super subtle about it. I hope the characters make it interesting. I hope the dialogue makes it interesting, but I'm definitely trying to make a point. And it is the perfect plane read. That's really the big win. Read it on the plane. You'll love it. Hopefully.
Yeah. Perfect.
Hopefully.
Cool. Well, with that in mind, let's dive into our Amazon picks. This is the part of the show where we suggest stuff that you should buy on Amazon. And if you buy it through the links in the show notes, which are at notarealjob.com, or through our gear page, which collects all the picks, that's notarealjob.com/gear. If you buy through those links, we get a small percentage, which lets us know you love us. So I'm going to go first this week, and I'm going to say, just to start off, you should buy Scolding the Winds by this up-and-coming young author Joel Kelly, and I think it's also $4.99 for the Kindle version, and yeah, you can't go wrong. Support it, review it, let us know how you love it. I'm sure you will. So that, but also I'm going to put in another pick, Seneca's Dialogues and Letters. The Costa translation. Seneca is kind of interesting because I found in particular this collection, he's kind of saying the same thing like 1,000 times, even to the point where in one of the letters he'll have like there'll be 10 paragraphs in the row that are basically restating the same idea. So it can feel a little tedious to read sometimes because of that. And also, as the introduction attests, like Seneca was a very well-off, wealthy person high up in government who's sort of preaching to let go of monetary possessions and things like that. But aside from all of that, the core is really interesting. And he says a lot of really interesting things that obviously we're still talking about 2,000 years later. So I think that says a lot. And it's another one that's pretty quick to get through, especially if you're open to skimming through some of the really the stuff that's really duplicating earlier stuff. So yeah, take a look.
Yeah, I think we should discuss. Yes, he was, assistant or not assistant aide or counselor to Nero.
But to cut in, sorry, I think it's kind of similar to us. We're speaking from a position of privilege, and I think it's kind of similar. Maybe they weren't so aware of that concept back then, but I think it's still, it's worth the read. That doesn't discount some of the things that he says necessarily. Just something to have in the back of your head.
Okay, yeah, because I think his disgrace and suicide might do something to win him some favor back, even though he did come from great privilege. The way he handled his own, banishment and death, I think there's something to learn there. I'm also going to recommend my own book. You can go to joelkelly.ca for more links there. But I'll also recommend, I finally got the pencil, like for the paper app on the iPad. Yeah, it's fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
So the new, I think it's called like Think Kit for paper, allows you to do really cool like graphs, charts, and stuff, all kind of like freehand drawing. So I've been using that a little bit. I'm toying with the idea of doing a whole presentation. I've got a talk that I'm doing for the Conference Board of Canada, or a networking group through the Conference Board of Canada in a couple weeks, and I'm toying with the idea of doing it kind of like freehand drawing live. With graphs and stuff, and pencil would be the only way to do that. So it's really cool. It's a stylus, but it's a really good stylus, and it works amazingly well with the paper app. So that's my reco. It's $60. Get it on Amazon. Comes in, actually, you can get the graphite version, the one that doesn't look like natural wood, for $10 cheaper. So obviously I went for the more expensive one because I like the look of it.
Sure.
What can you do?
I understand.
All right.
Cool. Well, that does it for our podcast. Again, we really want your feedback, your questions, your advice. We love all of it. And you can do that. notarealjob.com/questions or /contact are the two places to get in touch with us. Of course, we're also on Twitter, twitter.com/NARJcast, or Chris Van Patten and Joel Kelly. You can also find us on Facebook, facebook.com/notarealjob. And if you really like the show, of course, share it with your friends. And you can give them the direct link to our iTunes entry, notarealjob.com/iTunes will get you there. And that's also where you can go to leave reviews. We love your reviews. And if you have left a review recently, thank you. I have not checked in a little while. I promise I'll do that before the next show, and shout out to everyone who thanked us. So really appreciate that. We're also on Stitcher, if that's your cup of tea, notarealjob.com/Stitcher. And also, we haven't discussed it in a little while, but if you're not clicking through to see the show notes, you're definitely missing out. Lindsay, our wonderful, intrepid sort of content manager, writer, organizer of life person, she goes through and takes notes. And so she puts in little quotes that we say. You can click them and instantly tweet them out to your friends. She also posts the show to YouTube, so you can easily share the YouTube link. And that also lets you jump around and link to specific sections of the show. And she also puts in the links. So when we mention the Amazon gear, she links that up. And also if we are talking about specific books or topics or things that there are more resources about, she'll put those links in the notes as well. So it's a really great resource. Definitely recommend checking that out. And finally, also a little off topic, but shout out to Oz, who mentioned to both of us on Twitter that she did a Twitter presentation or a Twitter class at her school. So awesome.
Yeah. Congratulations.
Keep it up. Super fan. Cool. Well, maybe we'll have to get you back on the show to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, that would be amazing. Also, congratulations to Ireland. They did the right thing. So that's super exciting.
Bravo. Bummer it had to come down to a vote, but
other countries would be so lucky to get to vote on that. So I mean, hopefully this is the sign of many more countries coming to their senses. Yours included. When does the Supreme Court rule on that? It's underway now, isn't it? Yeah,
June, I think early June. So we'll know about
fingers
that.
Crossed you join the party.
But anywho, fingers crossed.
And let me tell you, once it becomes totally legal, things get crazy. No, I'm kidding. Obviously, literally nothing changes except for a bunch of people get the rights they always deserved. All right. Did we do the Twitters? Okay. Did we do Joelkelly.ca?
We did everything.
Okay.
You
Joel Kelly
did,
does,
yes, earlier.
Scolding the Winds. Search
Cool.
for it on Amazon.
All right.
All right. Love
Search
you all.
for it on your Googles. Okay. Love you all. Bye.